The Aegis glided through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek form cutting through the stars like a knife through fabric. Commander Sinax, a seasoned leader of the United Earth Forces, stood at the helm. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that broke the silence of the bridge. He had been in countless battles, across planets and galaxies, but this mission was different. There was no enemy to face, no invasion to stop. Instead, they were sent to investigate a strange distress signal emanating from an uncharted planet in the outer rim of the galaxy. The signal was weak, almost as if it had been sent out of desperation. The message was an old human military code, one Sinax recognized. His eyes narrowed. It was a message from an old ally, Zurich, a warrior from a race known as the Sultera. Sinax had met her many years ago, during a peace mission. They had worked together, fought side by side, and shared a bond that had lasted through the years. But after that mission, Zurich had disappeared, and there had been no word from her since. Now she was calling out to him, and he couldn't ignore it. "Prepare for landing," Sinax commanded to his crew, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity. He felt a mix of excitement and wariness. Zurich was no ordinary ally. She was strong, intelligent, and a skilled diplomat. But there was always an air of mystery around her. He had often wondered if there was more to their relationship than either of them had acknowledged. As the ship descended toward the surface of the planet, Sinax couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The planet looked beautiful from above, with vast forests, winding rivers, and towering mountains. Yet something about it seemed too quiet. It was as if the planet was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The Aegis touched down on the rocky terrain, and Sinax led his crew down the ramp. The air was thin but breathable, and the sky was a strange shade of violet, unlike anything he had seen before. He glanced around, taking in his surroundings. There was no sign of life, no other ships or signs of civilization. But then he saw her. Standing at the edge of a nearby cliff, framed by the setting sun, was Zurich. She was tall, even for an alien, with long, flowing hair that shimmered like starlight. Her skin was a deep shade of purple, and her eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to glow with a fierce intelligence. She stood there, waiting for them, her posture regal and confident. Sinax's heart skipped a beat. The last time he had seen her, she had been a different person. War had changed them both, but Zurich had always been someone who carried herself with a sense of quiet power. She had always been in control. "Commander Sinax," she called out, her voice a smooth blend of authority and warmth. "It's been too long." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. He had thought about her many times over the years, wondering where she had gone, what had happened to her. But seeing her again, standing before him, made him realize how much he had missed her presence. "Zurich," he replied, his voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside him. "It's good to see you again." She smiled, though it was a smile tinged with something he couldn't quite place. There was a shadow in her eyes, as though she was carrying a heavy burden. She stepped forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. "I've brought you here for a reason." "Sinax," Zurich said, her voice soft but firm. "Something has happened, something that requires your attention." Sinax's curiosity grew. "What is it? What's going on?" Zurich paused for a moment, her gaze shifting to the horizon. The wind picked up, sending a chill through the air. "I need your help, Sinax. But I must warn you, things are not as they seem." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Zurich turned to face him fully, her eyes locking onto his. "I've come to claim you, Sinax. You are my prize now." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Sinax blinked, taken aback. He had heard many things in his career, but this was unexpected, even for Zurich. "Claim me," he repeated, his voice low and confused. Zurich nodded. "Yes, it's an ancient tradition of the Sultera. When a warrior like me finds someone worthy, they claim them as their prize. It's an honor. And you, Sinax, have proven yourself time and time again. You're worthy. Sinax's mind raced. He had never heard of such a tradition. The idea of being claimed like some kind of trophy didn't sit well with him. He took a step back, his hand instinctively moving toward the hilt of his weapon. This is nonsense. I don't belong to anyone. Zurich's expression softened, but her eyes remained unyielding. I don't expect you to understand, but this is the way of my people. It's a bond, a sign of respect. To be claimed is to be honored, to be acknowledged as someone great. Sinax still didn't understand. But one thing was clear. Zurich was not joking. This wasn't a prank or a misunderstanding. She was serious. You want to make me your prize? Sinax asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and defiance. Zurich nodded, her gaze never leaving his. Yes, and you will have to accept it. The question is not whether you will accept it, but how you will deal with it. Sinax felt a sudden chill run down his spine. He had no idea what this prize meant, but he knew one thing for sure. The stakes had just been raised. Sinax stood there, speechless, staring at Zurich. Her words echoed in his mind. I've come to claim you, Sinax. You are my prize now. He had never expected this, not in 1,000 years. The idea of being claimed like some sort of trophy was absurd. He had fought in many battles, led countless missions, but this was something entirely different. Zurich stood before him, her posture tall and proud, her eyes gleaming with something that almost resembled anticipation. Sinax couldn't decide if she was serious or playing some kind of joke, but there was no humor in her gaze. She was as serious as the battles he had fought and survived. I don't understand, Sinax said slowly, trying to make sense of her words. His mind was racing, trying to figure out what she meant by prize. Zurich took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. It's an ancient tradition of my people, she explained, her voice calm and unwavering. When a warrior of great strength and honor encounters another being they respect, someone they believe has earned their admiration, they claim them as their prize. It's a bond, a symbol of respect. Sinax shook his head, still confused. So, what? You want to take me back to your people as some kind of object, a possession? Zurich's eyes softened, but the sharpness in her gaze remained. No, it's not about ownership. It's about respect. You, Sinax, have proven yourself time and time again. You've shown bravery, intelligence, and the ability to lead others through even the most impossible situations. My people honor strength, and you possess it in abundance. That is why I claim you. Sinax felt a strange mix of anger and confusion rise within him. This was not how he had expected a reunion with an old ally to unfold. The idea of being claimed felt wrong to him, as if his worth could somehow be measured by someone else's standards. He had always fought for his freedom and the freedom of his people. To be called a prize felt like an insult. So, what happens now? Sinax asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though the tension in the air was thick. Do I just accept this claim? Is there no choice in the matter? Zurich didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to face the horizon, her eyes scanning the distant mountains. That is the part that is difficult to explain. The claim is not just a gift, it is also a responsibility. To be claimed means that you are honored, yes, but it also means that you are bound to my people in a way that cannot easily be undone. It is a mark of trust, of unity. Sinax was beginning to understand, but his mind was still full of questions. You mean, if I accept, I have to stay with you, help your people, fight for you? Zurich's eyes turned back to him, and she nodded slowly. In a way, but it is not a command. It is an invitation, an offer of cooperation, of alliance. My people are strong, but we need allies to continue our survival in this galaxy. You, Sinax, represent everything we value: strength, courage, and loyalty. And if I refuse, Sinax asked, his voice growing firmer. He wasn't ready to be forced into a decision he didn't fully understand. Ziric's expression grew serious again. "If you refuse," she said quietly, "it will not be the end. But you must understand, refusing is not without consequences. The claim is a powerful bond, and rejecting it would be seen as a rejection of my people and our traditions. There are some factions of my kind who would not understand your refusal. They may view it as an act of disrespect, and that could lead to conflict." Sinax's mind raced. He didn't want to get involved in an intergalactic political mess, especially not over something as strange as being claimed. But there was something about Ziric that made him hesitant to dismiss her request outright. Despite her words, despite the confusion in his mind, he couldn't ignore the bond they had once shared. There was a history there, one built on mutual respect. He took a deep breath and asked, "What would it mean for me if I accepted?" Ziric's face softened for the first time since she had arrived. "It would mean you stand with us, as an equal. You would be respected among my people, no longer just a warrior, but a leader. Your voice would carry weight among the Sultera, and more importantly, we would fight together, as one." Sinax mulled over her words, his mind heavy with the possibilities. Being claimed by Ziric, joining her people, meant becoming part of something larger than himself. It meant a future with the Sultera, a future he hadn't planned for. But was it something he could accept? Was it a future he could trust? "I need time to think about this," Sinax said at last, his voice calmer now. He was still unsure, but he wasn't ready to make a decision just yet. Ziric nodded, her eyes still studying him with a mixture of patience and something deeper, something he couldn't quite place. "Of course. Take all the time you need, Sinax. But remember, the offer is not indefinite. You are a prize to us, but the time for choosing will not last forever." With those final words, Ziric turned and began to walk back toward the rocky outcrop, leaving Sinax standing there alone, his thoughts swirling like the winds around him. He had never imagined that a simple reunion would lead him to such a moment. The future was uncertain, and he knew that whatever choice he made, it would have consequences not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. The days following Ziric's shocking proposal were tense and full of uncertainty. Sinax spent hours pacing the halls of the Aegis, unable to shake the thoughts of what Ziric had said. Being claimed was not a concept he could easily accept. It felt wrong, unnatural, but Ziric's sincerity made it difficult to dismiss outright. She had been a trusted ally once, and now she was offering him something that, while strange, seemed to be genuine. But even more pressing was the matter of Ziric's strange insistence on a series of trials. She had told Sinax that in order to understand her people's traditions and to prove his worth, he must face tests. These would not be simple physical battles, as Sinax was used to. No, these trials would be a test of his mind, his intelligence, and his ability to think under pressure. They were to begin the following morning. Sinax sat in the ship's command center, his fingers lightly tapping the surface of a table. His crew was just as confused as he was, but they were loyal. They knew Sinax wouldn't make any decisions without first considering every angle. He needed time, but more than that, he needed answers. He wasn't sure what he was walking into, but he was determined to find out. The next day, Ziric arrived on the Aegis, her face unreadable. She wore the same regal armor she had worn during their first meeting, though now there was something different about her. Her eyes seemed more serious, as if the weight of their upcoming trials weighed heavily on her. "Are you ready, Sinax?" Ziric asked, her voice calm but firm. "The first test will begin shortly." Sinax nodded, though the tension in his chest remained. "What exactly do these tests prove?" "You've already said that I'm worthy. Isn't that enough?" Ziric smiled faintly, a glint of something almost playful in her eyes. "Worthy in battle, yes. But the Sultera value more than just physical strength. We value wisdom, resilience, and leadership. These tests will show whether you truly possess the qualities I believe you have. All right, Sinax said, standing up from his seat. Let's get this over with. Zurich led him to a secluded area on the ship. It was an open space, illuminated by soft, glowing lights. At the center stood a large console with a strange device attached to it, its glowing screens flickering with symbols Sinax didn't recognize. It was clear that the test was not going to be simple. The first trial, Zurich explained, is a mental challenge. You will need to solve a series of complex puzzles, designed to test your ability to think under pressure. Time is your enemy here. Sinax eyed the device warily. He wasn't known for his intelligence in the traditional sense. He had a keen sense of strategy, but puzzles, that wasn't his strength. Still, he wasn't about to back down. Zurich activated the console, and the screen lit up with the first puzzle, a series of shapes and symbols. Hats seemed to shift and change. Sinax stared at it for a moment, feeling the pressure mount. He could feel Zurich watching him, her gaze sharp and expectant. The puzzle was complicated. The symbols seemed to move and rearrange themselves at random. But Sinax noticed a pattern, just a slight flicker in the way they aligned. It was subtle, but it was there. He focused on the shapes, his mind working quickly. His heart raced as he worked through the puzzle, each step bringing him closer to the solution. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The puzzle seemed to mock him, changing as he got closer to solving it, as if it didn't want him to succeed. But Sinax didn't give up. He had faced far worse odds before, and this was no different. Slowly, carefully, he adjusted the final piece and watched as the screen flashed green, signaling the puzzle's completion. Zurich's eyes widened with surprise. "Impressive," she said. "Most would have taken much longer. I expected you to struggle more." Sinax didn't say anything. He simply nodded, his mind still buzzing with adrenaline. This was only the first test, and already it had pushed him to his limits. "The second trial will be different," Zurich said, leading him to a new section of the ship. "This one will test your ability to lead. You will have to make decisions under pressure, with little time to think." As they entered the new room, Sinax saw several holographic projections of various scenarios. One showed a group of soldiers trapped behind enemy lines, surrounded by overwhelming forces. Another showed a civilian ship caught in a deadly storm, with the crew panicking. Each scenario had one thing in common. Sinax had to act quickly and decisively. Zurich activated the first scenario, and the holographic image of the trapped soldiers appeared in front of him. The timer above the projection ticked down, adding to the pressure. Sinax didn't hesitate. He analyzed the situation in seconds, quickly deciding on the best course of action. He issued commands to his crew, ensuring that they would be able to extract the soldiers safely. The scenario ended with the soldiers safely aboard a rescue ship, and the pressure began to ease. "Well done," Zurich said, her voice tinged with respect. "You acted with calm and precision. But there is more." The second trial was followed by several others, each more difficult than the last. Sinax found himself facing different tests, physical endurance challenges, moments where his knowledge of alien cultures was tested, and even more complex decision-making situations. Each trial pushed him further, but he continued to excel. With every challenge he overcame, the weight of Zurich's claim became more real. By the end of the day, Sinax was exhausted. He had passed every test, but the emotional toll was starting to show. Zurich, however, seemed pleased with his performance. "You have done well," she said, her voice softer than before. "I knew you had the strength, but now I know you have the wisdom and the resilience. You are more than just a warrior. You are a leader." Sinax didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to reject everything, to walk away from it all. But another part of him couldn't deny that he had earned Zurich's respect, and perhaps in some strange way, he had earned a place among the Selterra. As the final trial came to a close, Sinax realized something. This wasn't just about being claimed. It was about proving that humanity could stand side by side with other races, not as subordinates, but as equals. The trials had been a test of more than just his abilities. They had been a test of his worth in this new world, a world where alliances meant everything. And though the path ahead was still unclear, Synax knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going down without a fight. The trials were over, but the uncertainty remained. Synax had passed every challenge Zurich set before him, from mental puzzles to leadership decisions, and even tests of strength. But with each victory, the weight of the situation grew heavier. He had earned Zurich's respect, but there was still the matter of what came next. What did Zurich truly want from him? Was he merely an ally, or was there something more to her claim? Zurich had promised that the trials were just the beginning. She had said the bond between them would be more than just an alliance. It would be a partnership. But Synax wasn't so sure. Something about the way she spoke made him wonder if there was more at stake than just their friendship. He had no desire to be someone's prize, but as he spent more time with her, he began to see a different side of her, a side that hinted at something deeper, something she hadn't yet revealed. As the sun began to set on the alien planet, Synax stood on the observation deck of the Aegis, staring out at the violet sky. The stars were scattered across the vast expanse of space, each one a distant world full of its own mysteries. He was lost in thought when he heard a soft voice behind him. Lost in thought, Commander. Zurich's voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable tone of concern in it. Synax turned to face her. She stood in the doorway, her eyes searching his face. Despite the challenges they had just faced, there was still something unsettling about the way she watched him. "I've been thinking about your offer," Synax said, his voice steady. "The claim, everything. I still don't fully understand it. You've told me about your traditions, but what happens if I choose not to accept?" Zurich stepped forward, her eyes softening for a moment. "I know this is difficult for you, Synax, but there are more things at play here than just my people's traditions. It's about more than just what you can offer the Celterra. It's about what we can offer each other." Synax looked at her closely, trying to read her expression. There was a hint of vulnerability in her eyes, something that contradicted the powerful and confident leader she had shown herself to be. "I don't want to be anyone's possession," Synax said, his voice low. "I've fought too long for my own freedom to give it up now." Zurich's gaze softened even further. "I never intended for you to feel that way," she said quietly. "The claim is not about possession, Synax. It's about unity. About finding strength together in a world where survival often depends on alliances. I know my people. I know the weight of their traditions, but I also know that you don't belong to anyone, least of all me." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Synax wasn't sure what to make of them, but they gave him something he hadn't expected. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, Zurich was being honest. Perhaps this bond wasn't meant to control them, but to build something stronger. Before he could respond, the ship's alarms suddenly blared, cutting through the air like a sharp knife. The peaceful moment vanished instantly as the sound of red flashing lights filled the room. "Report," Synax barked, instinctively turning toward his crew. A crew member quickly approached him, urgency in their voice. "Commander, we're picking up multiple ships entering our orbit. They're unidentified, and they're approaching fast." Zurich's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "We've been followed. I knew this day would come." "Followed?" Synax asked, his mind racing. "Who are they?" "I don't know, but we need to prepare," Zurich said firmly. "These ships could be a threat to both our people. They're not like anything I've seen before. Their technology is advanced. We need to act quickly." Synax nodded, his instincts taking over. "All hands on deck. Ready the weapons and prepare for a possible attack." The crew scrambled into action, moving with practiced efficiency. Zurich stood by Synax's side, her eyes fixed on the approaching ships. It was clear now that whatever had brought her here was not just a matter of tradition. There were other forces at play, and Sinax was about to be caught in the middle of something much bigger than he had anticipated. As the mysterious ships drew closer, Sinax turned to Zurich. "What do you know about these ships? Who would be foolish enough to follow us here?" Zurich hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm not sure, but I have a theory. There's a faction within the Sultera who might not take kindly to our alliance. They believe in the old ways, the ones that value strength above all else. They won't accept me choosing an outsider as a partner, especially not one from a race as young as humans." Sinax frowned, his grip tightening on the rail. "So this could be an internal conflict." "Exactly," Zurich said, her voice tinged with concern. "If they found us, it's because they believe I'm weakening the Sultera's traditions. They might want to eliminate me, and anyone who stands with me." The urgency of the situation was clear. Sinax had fought battles before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of both their peoples. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, but there was no time to second-guess. The battle had already begun. "Then we fight," Sinax said, his voice steady. "But we do it together." Zurich nodded, her expression hardening into one of determination. "Together, Commander. Let's show them what it means to stand united." As the mysterious ships closed in, Sinax knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. The battles they faced would test not only their strength but their resolve. And in the end, their bond, whatever it truly was, would determine whether they survived the coming storm. The ages trembled as the alarms blared louder, a constant reminder of the danger drawing closer. Sinax stood at the command center, his mind sharp and focused. The crew was moving quickly, preparing the ship for battle, but there was no denying the pressure mounting around them. Zurich stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the approaching ships. "Commander," one of the crew members called, "we've identified the lead ship. It's a Sultera warship. Tyran class. It's heavily armed. Any chance we can outrun them?" Sinax asked, his voice calm but filled with urgency. Zurich shook her head. "No. The Tyran-class ships are faster and more advanced than anything you've got. They'll catch us before we can make a jump to hyperspace." Sinax clenched his fists. He had known the Sultera's internal divisions were deep, but he hadn't expected this. The fact that they were being pursued by their own people made everything more complicated. He had always fought to protect humanity. But now, standing with Zurich, he realized that this fight was about much more than just him or her. It was about the future of two peoples. Zurich turned to him, her face determined. "They won't back down easily. We'll have to fight." Sinax nodded. "We're ready for them. We need to make sure our shields are at full strength," Zurich continued, her voice steady. "If we're going to survive this, we need to outsmart them, not just outgun them. We'll need every advantage we can get." With that, Zurich moved quickly to help coordinate the defense. Sinax followed, working alongside his crew to prepare for the inevitable battle. He knew that if they didn't act fast, they wouldn't survive the encounter. But even as they readied the ship's weapons, there was something gnawing at him, a feeling that something more was at play here than just a fight. As the minutes ticked by, Sinax couldn't shake the thought that the Sultera's leadership had made a dangerous mistake by sending these ships after them. There had to be more to Zurich's claim than just tradition. She had warned him about the faction within her people, but he had no idea how far their power extended. What would happen if Zurich lost? What would happen to him, and to the alliance he had started to believe in? "Commander," a crew member said, breaking his thoughts, "the lead ship is in range. They're locking onto us." Sinax glanced at the readout. "Prepare to fire," he ordered, his voice steady. "Target their engines. We need to disable them before they get too close." The crew went into action, and the Aegis shuddered as the ship's weapons fired in rapid succession. The first volley hit the enemy ship's engines, sending sparks flying from the hull, but the Tyran-class warship quickly retaliated, firing a barrage of missiles toward them. The Aegis rocked violently as several missiles struck the shields, but they held for the moment. "Shields at 75%, reported one of the crew members. "They're holding, but not for long." Ziric's face was hard as she watched the battle unfold. "We need to do more than just survive. If we don't take out their weapons, we won't have a chance." Sinax knew she was right. The warship was powerful, and they had no time to waste. He turned to his crew. "Prepare a boarding party. We'll disable their weapons from the inside." The crew exchanged glances, but they knew the stakes. A boarding mission was dangerous, especially on a heavily armed enemy ship, but they had no other choice. Sinax and Ziric both knew that this was their best chance at survival. Within minutes, a small team was assembled, including Sinax and Ziric. The plan was simple: infiltrate the warship, disable its weapon systems, and escape before they were overwhelmed. Ziric led the way, her confidence unshaken by the danger. Sinax followed closely behind, his mind racing with the possibilities of what might go wrong. As they boarded the enemy ship through a small opening in the hull, they found themselves in the cold, dark corridors of the Terran-class warship. The ship was eerily quiet, with only the hum of machinery breaking the silence. Ziric moved quickly, her knowledge of Celterra technology guiding them through the maze of corridors. Sinax remained on high alert. His senses sharpened as they made their way deeper into the ship. "We're getting close," Ziric whispered. "The weapons control room is just ahead." As they rounded a corner, they were met with the unexpected. A group of Celterra soldiers stood guard outside the weapons control room. They were armed and ready for a fight, their faces grim. Sinax's heart raced as the soldiers raised their weapons in unison. "You didn't think we'd let you get away that easily, did you?" one of the soldiers said, his voice cold and filled with disdain. Ziric stepped forward, her voice firm. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to save our people. Stand down." The soldiers didn't lower their weapons. If anything, they tightened their grip on their guns, their eyes narrowing. "Traitor," another soldier spat. "You've abandoned your people. You've chosen the human over your own kind." Sinax stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with authority. "This isn't about humans or Celterra. It's about the future. If we don't stop fighting each other, we'll all lose." For a moment, there was silence. The tension was thick in the air, but Ziric's unwavering stance seemed to have an effect. Slowly, one of the soldiers lowered his weapon, his face conflicted. "You're not the enemy," the soldier said, his voice softer now. "But neither are we. We're just following orders." Sinax saw an opening. "Then help us. Help us save both our people." The soldier hesitated, his eyes darting between Sinax and Ziric. Finally, with a reluctant nod, he lowered his weapon fully. The rest of the soldiers followed suit. "All right," the soldier said. "We'll help you, but make it quick." Ziric nodded in appreciation. "Thank you. Let's end this." With the soldiers' help, they were able to breach the weapons control room and disable the ship's main guns. But the battle wasn't over yet. The ship's internal alarms blared, signaling that reinforcements were on the way. They had to escape, and fast. As Sinax and Ziric led the team back toward the Aegis, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of hope. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, it seemed like they might just have a chance. Together, the sirens inside the Celterra warship kept blaring, echoing through every corridor. Sinax and Ziric moved quickly with their team, including the Celterra soldiers who had decided to help them. Though they had disabled the main weapons, they knew reinforcements would soon arrive. "Faster," Ziric urged, glancing back as red warning lights flashed on the walls. "We don't have much time." Sinax led the way, his eyes sharp, searching for the fastest route back to their docking point. His mind was racing, but he kept his focus. They had taken a huge risk coming aboard this ship, but if they made it out alive, they could change everything, perhaps even avoid a full war between their peoples. As they ran, one of the Celterra soldiers, A young woman named Rila came up beside Zurich. "Commander Zurich," she said, a little breathless but serious. "Why are you doing this? Why risk your life for a human?" Zurich looked at her, slowing for a moment as they turned a corner. "Because he is not just a human, Rila. He's my friend. He's proven himself when many others would have walked away. And because our people need new allies, not more enemies." Rila looked thoughtful, but said nothing more as they kept moving. Finally, they'd reached the docking area, where their small boarding ship was waiting. But just as they thought they were safe, a group of armed Selterra warriors blocked their way. These were loyal to the old traditions, the ones who saw Sinax as an outsider and Zurich as a traitor. Their leader, a tall and fierce-looking warrior named General Varnuk, stepped forward. "You will go no further," Varnuk growled, glaring at Zurich. "You have broken the code of our people. You have brought shame to the Selterra by choosing this human. Now, you will pay the price." Zurich stepped in front of Sinax, her eyes blazing with anger. "You call me a traitor, but you are the one bringing ruin to our people. Varnuk, we need allies to survive in this galaxy. Can't you see that?" Varnuk sneered. "Allies? No, we need strength. We don't need weak creatures like him." He pointed at Sinax, his hand trembling with rage. Sinax stepped forward calmly, meeting Varnuk's gaze. "I may be human, but I've fought battles you can't even imagine. I've faced death to protect my people and others. If you think I'm weak, you'll soon see how wrong you are." The tension was thick in the air. Everyone stood still, waiting for someone to make the first move. Suddenly, Rila stepped forward, her voice loud and clear. "General Varnuk, I stand with Commander Zurich. She wants to save our people, not destroy them. And if you attack, you'll have to face me too." Several other soldiers who had been following Zurich and Sinax also raised their weapons in support. It was a shocking moment. Even Varnuk looked surprised. "You would betray your own people for them." Varnuk spat, but now there was a hint of doubt in his voice. "No," Rila said firmly. "I'm fighting for my people. You're the one leading us to destruction." For a long moment, Varnuk looked between Rila and Zurich, his face twisted in anger. But before he could give an order, Sinax raised his hand and spoke again. "Varnuk, listen to me," Sinax said, his voice calm but strong. "This doesn't have to end in blood. We can find another way. Zurich believes in peace, and I believe in her. If you stand down now, we can avoid this fight." There was a heavy silence. Everyone was watching Varnuk, waiting to see what he would do. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Varnuk lowered his weapon. "You have courage, human," he said bitterly. "But I will not forget this." Without another word, Varnuk turned and walked away, taking his loyal soldiers with him. The path to their ship was now clear. Sinax let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Zurich gave him a small smile, full of both relief and admiration. "You did well, Sinax. You spoke like a true leader." "We're not done yet," Sinax replied, though a smile tugged at his lips. "Let's get back to the Aegis." The group quickly boarded the ship, and moments later, they launched away from the Selterra warship. The Aegis waited for them, and as soon as they were on board, Sinax gave the order to move away from danger. As the stars stretched into lines with the jump to hyperspace, Sinax stood beside Zurich on the command deck. They watched the swirling colors of space together, both feeling the weight of what they had just done. "We've made some powerful enemies," Zurich said softly. "Yes," Sinax agreed, "but maybe we've also made some powerful friends." Zurich turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. "Our journey is only beginning, Sinax. There are still many who will try to stop us." Sinax nodded. "Then we face them together." Zurich smiled, a genuine smile that made her sharp features soften. Together. As they looked out into space, both of them knew the road ahead would not be easy. But for the first time, there was hope. A hope that humans and Selterra could build something better. something stronger. And they would fight for that future, side by side. The ages glided smoothly through space, far from the Selterra warship and the battle they had left behind. The stars twinkled outside the windows, peaceful and calm, but inside the ship, everyone was still on edge. The danger was not over yet. Sinax stood near the large viewing window of the command deck, his arms crossed as he watched the stars. Zurich joined him, quiet for a moment, as they both thought about everything that had happened. "They'll come after us again," Zurich finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but serious. "Varnak won't forget what happened. And the ones who want war, they'll keep coming." Sinax nodded. "I know, but I think we've shown them that we won't back down." Zurich looked at him with a small smile. "You surprised me, Sinax. You stood up to Varnak. You made him think. Maybe others will think too." Sinax turned to her, smiling slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You made me believe that there could be another way." Zurich's eyes softened. "You've shown me too. Humans are stronger than I thought. Brave, loyal." Just then, a young officer came up to them, holding a datapad. "Commander Sinax, we've received a message," he said, "from the Selterra High Council." Sinax and Zurich exchanged a surprised glance. "Put it through," Sinax ordered. A hologram flickered to life in front of them, showing an older Selterra leader dressed in elegant robes. His eyes were sharp, but his voice was calm as he spoke. "Commander Sinax, Zurich of Selterra," the leader said, "we have watched your actions. Some of us believe that the time for old traditions has passed. We do not wish for endless war. You have opened our eyes to another way." Zurich's mouth fell slightly open. She had not expected this. Sinax, too, looked surprised but hopeful. The hologram continued. "There are still those who oppose you. Varnak and his allies are strong. But there are others now who believe in peace. We want to meet, to talk, to find a new path." With that, the message ended. For a moment, there was silence on the command deck. Then Sinax smiled. "Well," he said, looking at Zurich, "it looks like we're not alone anymore." Zurich laughed softly, relief clear on her face. "Maybe we've started something bigger than us." Sinax nodded. "Let's hope so." Later, as the ship sailed toward the meeting point given by the Selterra Council, Sinax and Zurich met with the crew. They gathered everyone in the main hall, where both humans and Selterra soldiers stood side by side. Sinax stepped forward to speak. "Today we did something important," he said, his voice strong. "We stood up not just for ourselves, but for the future. We showed that humans and Selterra don't have to be enemies. We can fight together for something better." The room was quiet, everyone listening closely. "I know some of you are scared," Sinax continued. "And that's okay. What we're doing isn't easy. But if we give up now, everything we've done will be for nothing. So I ask you, stand with us. Keep fighting. Not for war, but for peace." There was a pause. Then, slowly, people began to nod. Ryla, the Selterra soldier who had supported Zurich, stepped forward. "We stand with you, Commander," she said firmly. "For peace." Others joined her, adding their voices. "For peace," they said together. Zurich smiled as she stood beside Sinax, her eyes proud. As the Aegis continued on its way, Sinax took a moment to reflect. When this all started, he had thought of Zurich as a threat, an alien warrior claiming him as a prize. Now she was his friend, his ally. They had come through so much together. Walking along the ship's corridors later that evening, Sinax and Zurich found themselves alone, away from the crew. "You know," Sinax said thoughtfully, "when you first made that surprising request, claiming me as your prize, I didn't know what to think." Zurich chuckled. "It was tradition. But now, I think I've found something more valuable than a prize. I've found a partner." Sinax smiled warmly. "I think I have too." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars outside. "What do you think will happen when we meet the council?" Sinax asked. Zurich shrugged slightly. "I don't know, but whatever happens, we'll face it together." Sinax reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Together," he agreed. Far out in the distance, a bright star shone in the darkness, like a symbol of hope. And as the Aegis flew toward the unknown future, its crew ready for whatever would come, Sinax and Zurich knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Together, they would fight for peace. Together, they would change the galaxy.